when you became alarmed, you moved Jessica West to the side of you, is that what you said?
Yes.
Out of the way of Mr. Eldritz? I mean, what was the purpose of your moving her to the side?
Mr. Eldritz was directly in front of me. He was speaking to me very loudly and aggressively. And at that point I realized that Jess was on my left. And with him threatening me, I did not want him to come up if he came to me and come to her, so I moved her to my side. I have this distinct memory of being fearful for her.
Okay. And being fearful for her, did you tell her, hey, you and Adam, just get out of here?
No, I didn't say that.
Did you tell the security guard, I'm afraid something's going to happen here, call the police?
No, I didn't.
And you say that the security guard actually came up and touched you and said she was going to call the police.
She touched me, and I heard her say, I'm going to call the police.
And was it in this frame that she touched you, or a few ahead?
She is touching me in this frame, and I remember it happening at about the same time that Mr. Eldridge was standing.
She didn't know you were a police officer, correct? Or a cop or a law enforcement officer at this point in time?
I don't know if she saw when I pulled out my creds in this time. I know she was standing behind me, and I thought she may have, but I couldn't be certain if she had.
And you heard her testify, and you heard her say that she did not know?
Yes, I did hear that. And I've also seen the frame that she's not looking in my direction when I have the creds out.
Okay. And so, but yet she goes up and touches you and says she's calling the police. Is that right?
She touched me. I didn't say she was specifically addressing me. And as you see later, she puts her arms out to other people. I believe she was addressing the crowd.
I would move to strike. Calls for speculation.
Well, I'm responsive to the question.
The question was, she's touching you, isn't she?
Yes, she is touching me in this frame.
And your friends Adam and Jessica are to your side, left and right respectively. Is that right?
Well, I see Adam. I think, as I said before, I don't see Jessica in this frame.
Now you said that you heard the security guard say that she was going to call 911.
She said she was calling the police.
Okay. Do you know whether she actually did that?
I know now that she did.
How long after she told you did she call the police?
Are you asking if I know now, or if I knew then?
If you know now, because you watched the video.
Yes, I have a good idea of when she called the police.
And that would be approximately 30 seconds after you said that she said she was going to. Is that correct?
I think that's a good estimation without looking at the timestamp.
At this point in time, there had been no federal crime committed, correct?
I would say no.
And at this point in time, you could have told your friends, let's get out of here and go.
Could have done many things. I was trying to process what was going on. It was happening very, very quickly.
You could have done many things, but leaving was an option, correct?
Attempting to leave was an option.
That was an option you chose not to take.
I believe it would be irresponsible to leave at that moment.
And you believe it would be irresponsible. I believe you testified yesterday because this was a situation that you felt responsible for. Is that right?
Why? The reason I believe that it would have been irresponsible to leave is that when I respond to something as a law enforcement officer, I have a duty to follow through with the result of that response.
As a law enforcement officer, you're always trying to de-escalate a situation, correct?
That's one of our primary objectives when we responding to the situation.
As a law enforcement officer, the last thing you want is a physical confrontation, correct?
I am trained, we are trained to try to avoid physical confrontations with people, yes.
And the last thing you want as a law enforcement officer is to basically make things worse, correct?
We do not try to make things worse.
That would be contrary to your training, correct?
Trying to make something worse would go against my training.
Okay. At this point in time, you had showed your creds to Mr. to Mr. Elders, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And I believe you said that his response to your showing your creds was a surprise to you.
At the moment, yes, it was not. It took me back.
Because he didn't acquiesce to anything that you were saying?
From my experience,
Why was it a surprise to you?
it was a surprise to me because from my experience, after identifying yourself as a police officer and issuing a sort of command, more than likely the person will listen to you.
And in this case, whatever you said to Colin Elders, he just got more angry, correct?
It appeared that that was the reason he became even more angry.
And you were surprised and shocked by this, correct?
That's correct.
And it took you said you had to stop and assess what was happening, right?
I stepped back and yes, I continued to assess what was going on.
You knew, though, that whatever you had done had not pacified the situation, correct?
Yes, I knew that my action had not pacified the situation.
In fact, you knew that your action had made the situation worse, correct?
Yes, that's what it appeared to me.
And at that point in time, when the situation was getting worse, Mr. Eldred's anger was directed at you, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And at that point in time, you said that basically you had taken responsibility for that situation, correct?
Well, I object. There's a question related to what was being said there or what the witness testified to.
This is a very small space. To try to walk to his left, I would have to go through Mr. Medeiros. To walk to Mr. Elders' right, I would have to walk within 1 or 2 feet of him if he had just threatened me. To safely leave myself, I could not be assured of that. And second, I had a responsibility to remain. I still was not satisfied that he would not, especially after showing how angry he really was and making actual physical threats, that he wouldn't return to his original target, Mr. Perrine, who to me was vulnerable and a target.
Okay, so you're saying that you did not think that you could safely leave.
I did not believe that it was a sure thing that I could leave safely.
Was it a sure thing that your friends could leave safely?
I cannot speak for that either.
Well,
Based on the way that Mr. Elders was directing his aggression to me, they could have attempted to.
did you tell them to leave?
No, I didn't.
You were afraid for their safety.
I was afraid, I was concerned primarily for my safety right at that moment. And not that he was directing his aggression towards my friends, I think you asked, but that if he did come at me, that they could be in the way. However, this, I think, is only seconds after I showed my credentials. In a matter of seconds, there's a lot of things to process through your head.
Okay, and one of those things was surprise at what had happened.
That's correct.
And you were still processing at this point that we see on the screen right now?
For any interaction with a person that's assaulted, you're continuously processing what's going on.
Well,
So
when you
yes, I was.
Well, when you say assaulted, at this point in time, the only assaulted indicator was what he said to you, correct?
No, that's not true.
Okay, what did he do that was assaultive?
The words he was using, as you said.
It's
and
verbal.
also- I'm sorry?
That's verbal, correct?
And also his body posture, the way he wasn't sitting, leaning back with his feet up. He was aggressively, now his hands before had been crossed, he moved his hands were out here like this, and he was leaning forward towards me with an aggressive look on his face.
And there was a table between you and me, correct?
Yes, there was a table between us.
At what point in time were you able to assess the situation, as you say?
I was assessing the situation through this entire minute and a half.
And I believe you said that at this point in time, or excuse me, after Mr. Eldert stood up, you still had not made a full assessment of what exactly was going on. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Did you ever make a full assessment of what was going on?
I still haven't made a full assessment.
You talked a lot yesterday about assault and pre-assault indicators. Do you remember that?
Yes, ma'am.
And tying in each frame to your training. Do you remember that?
Tying in each frame of the video to my
When you were explaining what you were doing, tying it into your training.
I believe I used the frames as a framework for some of the actions that I took, and yes, related that to my training.
Can you go forward, please? Stop, please. And can you tell us the time?
This is 2:41:07.
Okay, and this is a cashier view, and I believe yesterday you testified that this was the point in which you saw Mr. Elderts touch his waistband. Is that correct?
As Mr. Elliott stood up from the table, I saw him do a grab at his waistband.
Can we just go back a few frames to where he's seated and then come back to this? Okay, stop. So what hand did you see him use to touch his pat his waistband?
Frame, please.
I'm sorry, this is the same one. Maybe another time.
This is 2:41:07.
What hand did you see him pat his waistband with?
His right hand.
His right hand, okay?
And when I say waistband, I don't mean that he lifted up his shirt and touched his belt or the waistband. The waistband is the waistband area, meaning the area that would cross his waist.
Okay. And you say he did that between the time he sat down and the time we see here now in the frame. The time he was seated and the time we see now in the frame.
As he was standing up and stepping towards me, I
Okay.
saw it.
Can we go to the front dining view, please? And maybe go back to when Mr. Elderts is still seated. And please tell us the time.
This is 2:41:03.
Okay, can we go forward a few frames, please? Okay, and can we maybe go back one? Okay, and this number, please, this time.
This is 2:41:06.
You've seen him touch his, or pat his waistband by now?
I don't think he's not fully standing now.
Oh, I'm sorry, can we go ahead?
I don't know when exactly it was. It was
Okay,
as he was standing, I saw him touch his waistband.
okay, and at 2:41:08, is he fully standing?
Yes.
So it was sometime between the 3 frames before and now that you saw it?
That's not what I'm saying.
I'm sorry.
What I'm saying is, as he stood up and came towards me, his initial standing, I saw him touch. I cannot give an exact time frame.
And when you say touch, what do you mean?
Tap.
don't know what he was doing,
No, I don't know what he was doing.
but to you that was a pre-assault indicator.
Touching her waistband can be considered a pre-assault indicator. And when I first saw him do it, I took note of it. But it wasn't until he did it again that I considered it with the totality of the circumstances in the situation.
When was it that you saw him do that again?
He did it again right as he came at me when I first reached for my gun.
Okay, before we get to when you first reached for your gun, can we change back to the cashier view, please? And may we have the time, Mr. Deedy, please?
24109.
Okay, do you see Jessica West in this frame?
I believe so.
She's saying something to you here.
I don't know if she's speaking in this frame. I can see her face.
And her face is directed towards you.
I can see her face squarely. It's perpendicular to mine. It's also in the same direction as Adam. I don't know who she's speaking to or if she's speaking.
Is her mouth open?
Can't tell.
Do you remember her saying anything to you at this time?
No.
Do you remember her saying anything to Adam?
No, I don't.
Do you remember Adam saying anything to you?
No, I don't.
Can we go forward, please? I'm sorry, can we stop and go back one frame? Time, please, Mr. Deedy.
24113.
And do you see yourself in this frame?
Yes, I do.
And do you see Jessica West?
Yes, I do.
And do you see her arm on, or whose arm is that on your left shoulder?
This is Jess West here. This looks like her right arm on my left arm.
Okay, please be seated. And immediately in back of Ms. West is Adam Butowski, is that right?
From that perspective, it looks like he's a little to the left of her.
To the left of her?
I think so.
And they are between you and Colin Elders, is that right?
I don't know their exact relative positioning, but in this frame, Mr. Elders is on the left. I can see Mr. Bird here. There's Adam Gutowski, there's Jess. I don't know, there might be somebody else there. So there are people in the space between us. I don't know if they're directly between us. Yes, there are people between us.
And at this point in time, you don't know whether Jessica West is telling you to let's go, is that right?
I don't recall that.
And you don't know if Adam is telling you let's just go.
No, I don't recall that.
But whether you recall what they were saying or not, you did not leave at this point in time, is that right?
No, I didn't.
No crime, no federal crime has been committed at this point in time.
It's arguable.
Okay. Were you going to arrest Mr. Mr. Elders at this time?
No, that was not my intent.
And Mr. Elders at this point in time, his aggression was directed solely at you, correct?
At this particular moment, yes.
Please continue. Stop. Time, please.
24116.
Jessica West is immediately in front of you, looking up to you, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And she has her right arm on your left arm and back area, is that right?
Looks like she has her left arm.
I'm sorry, her right arm.
I'm sorry, it looks like she has her right arm around my waist.
And she's telling you something here, correct?
That's what it looks like.
What was she telling you?
I don't recall.
You don't remember whether she was saying, stop this?
I don't recall that, no.
You don't remember whether she was saying, let's just go?
The only thing I remember her saying during this minute and a half incident was do something.
And at what point in time did she say do something?
I don't recall when it was. I remember her hearing. I remember pleading in her voice, saying, do something.
Was it before or after this point in time that you're seeing them sweep?
I don't know when it was exactly. I think it was after this.
What is Adam doing here?
Adam is standing, facing the direction of the trash bin counter, and it looks like he's walking over to it.
Did he have any trash in his hands that you knew of?
Not that I can see.
Can we go forward, please? Stop. Time, please.
2:41:24.
And Jessica West is again in front of you, is that right?
It appears that she's in front of me, a little to the right.
And she has her right arm on your left arm, is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
And what is she saying to you here?
I don't recall. I don't know if she is saying anything to me.
And Adam, what is he doing?
I don't know what he's doing. He's standing behind me.
You don't know whether he's saying anything to you.
No, I don't.
Your attention is focused solely on Colin Elders?
Yes, I am intently watching Mr. Elders.
And that's because Mr. Elders was, according to what you felt, being aggressive towards you, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And only towards you.
At that moment, yes.
Okay, please continue. I'm sorry. Can we go back a couple? Go forward one, please. And the time frame, please.
2:41:26.
And at this point in time, it appears that you have gotten yourself out of Ms. West's hold and gone around her left side to confront Colin Elders, correct?
No, ma'am.
Have you gotten out of her hold?
I don't believe I would characterize it as having been in a hole.
Okay, her.
And second, I don't remember. I don't know exactly what was happening in this. I remember the course of events as they were before I first reached for my gun, and then after I first reached for my gun, and then prior to the kick. This is in between reaching for my gun and the kick. So this exact frame, I don't know. I don't recall what Jess did or what Adam did. I remember some of the things that Mr. Alberts was saying, and that he was moving towards me, and that I tried to move offline and away from him.
Okay, wait. So you're saying that you just remember reaching for your gun the first time and the second time?
No, I'm sorry if I misstated that. I'm not saying the only thing I remember is when I reached for my gun. I'm saying this is how I break down my memory of the events and how they occurred. Not frame by frame. I can try to relate frames to what happened in my memory. But this whole thing happened in maybe a minute and a half between the time I started talking to Mr. Elders and from the last shot was fired. We've been going over this for almost 8 hours. It's hard to go by frame. In my memory, the only way to do it, and the way I really recall it, is in a series of events and escalations.
And actually, this is not the first time that you've seen this video, correct?
That's correct.
And yesterday wasn't the first time either, correct?
No, it wasn't.
And you've seen this video many times, is that right?
I've watched this video hundreds, if not more, of times. I see it when I close my eyes, and when I try to sleep at night, I see the events again, over and over again.
Please
I
continue.
never stop seeing this.
Please continue. Okay. Stop, please. And the time here, Mr. Deedy, please.
2:41:29.
And at 2:41:29, Mr. Elders has stepped back and away from you from what we saw a few frames ago, correct?
I'm sorry, I wasn't watching this play.
Can you go back then? Okay, go forward. And we are again at 2:41:29.
29.
Thank you. Mr. Elders has stepped away from you.
I was previously standing here, and Mr. Elders was here. As he came towards me, I stepped offline, and then he moved to his left and backwards, and I moved away from him
He moved back away from you.
after stepping towards me.
And in this frame, he has moved back and away from you.
At this frame, he has moved towards me, and then to his left, backwards, and I have moved backwards and to my left.
And so right now in this frame, you are not as close to each other as you were 2 frames before, correct?
That's
I'm talking
correct.
about you and Mr. Elders.
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. West is now between you and Mr. Elders.
Yes, that's correct.
Did you fear for her safety at this point in time?
At this point in time, I believe this is when Mr. Elders, had begun to quiet down.
So my question is,
I'm sorry, you're right, I haven't answered your question. And I believe when I was assessing at this moment, I had my hand on my gun. I was still processing what was going on. And I believe immediately after this, Jess moved to the left and addressed Mr. Burr. And so right after this, I don't know if it's the next frame or not, there was no one at all between myself and Mr. Elders.
okay, but I'm asking you at this frame, when you have your hand on your gun, did you fear for Ms. West's safety?
I don't know exactly what I was thinking at this time.
Your hand being on your gun, that's a pre-assaultive indicator, correct?
Having my hand with the established grip on my gun is, as we're trained, after you witness an assault or assault indicators, you do that to prepare yourself. Having a hand on a gun is not a pre-assault indicator. That is something that's an overt action. Pre-assault indicators are something that you have to take as a whole and put together. That is an overt action. There's no mistaking that my hand is on that gun when it's a use of force.
So this is an obvious use of force gesture.
Yes, ma'am.
No question about it.
That's correct.
And not only is it a use of force gesture, it's a use of deadly force gesture.
No, ma'am.
Once you pull your gun and fire it, that's deadly force, correct?
When you fired your gun, that is deadly force. But not when you pulled it.
So somebody having a hand on their handgun, that's not an indication of imminent use of deadly force?
No, ma'am, that is not imminent deadly force.
No.
An indication of imminent deadly force.
Imminent use of
No, it is not an indication of imminent use of deadly force. And I can explain if you like.
It's escalating the show of use of force here, correct?
Yes, it was an escalation of other use of force tactics I used previously.
So from you, we have the escalation in use of force, first beginning with the showing of your credentials, correct?
No, ma'am.
Didn't you say that that's upping the use of force, showing your credentials?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and then another upping of the use of force from that is your hand on the gun.
Yes, ma'am.
Were there other indicators that you had between showing your credentials and putting your hand on the gun that showed an escalation of use of force?
From myself to Mr. Eldridge?
Yes.
No, I don't believe so.
Can we go forward, please?
This week it's 4:30. Sorry to interrupt, but ladies and gentlemen, for the day. I'll see you tomorrow at 9 o'clock in the morning.